Yeah, it just fell into my lap. It was really amazing. I couldn't believe that after my entire radio career as a paid DJ lasted a few months out in San Bernardino. 23 years later, now I'm the full-time morning guy at my favorite radio station in my own hometown. I couldn't believe my good fortune. It was amazing.
That is our guest, radio personality, as well as writer Jim Nelson. And last time we were talking about the demise of the music industry and the craze of downloading music back in 2000, 2001. And Jim, tell us more about what happened as far as the trade publications were concerned because of that.
So the music industry was beginning to shrink, and one of the things that you saw happening by that point was ad revenue for trade magazines, and there were a lot of trade magazines back in the day, and the Album Network just happened to be one of the ones that didn't survive as long as others. In fact, I guess FMQB might still even be out there. I haven't seen it, but my understanding is that they're still going.
Oh.
So you got Billboard and FMQB, but all the others have long since gone.
You were also with AAAradio.com. Tell us about that website.
Yeah, that was short-lived. Dave Cheney, who had been a part-time DJ at KMET actually, started that website. And it was geared directly to the AAA radio format. And it was, some news stuff. I think he was doing charts. I don't remember exactly, but he was doing all kinds of stuff like This Day in Music History. And, we did some interviews with people. We were talking about Nick Harcourt earlier. I interviewed Nick for an article that I did on AAAradio.com. But after the Album Network closed, Dave gave me an opportunity to work with him doing sales, so ad sales, but also the CD music sampler that I had done for years at the Album Network, both as the rock editor and the AAA editor. I started one of those for AAAradio.com since there was no longer one going out with the Album Network. And so I put together a monthly sampler and sold ads for AAAradio.com.
Wow. And then you got to be on the air at 88.5 KCSN. Tell us about how you got that opportunity.
Well, in between AAAradio.com and KCSN, I ran my own CD sampler that was my company called Taste of AAA. And every month I'd send out, just like I had done with AAAradio.com and the Album Network, I sent out a CD sampler, only I was doing it out of my house as my company. And when KCSN went AAA, I added them to my mailing list, and I got a hold of the GM who was, kind of overseeing a consultant who was programming it at the time. No DJs. I got a hold of her and told her I was sending her the sampler, and she emailed me back and said, "Oh, and you live in our neighborhood, and you're the AAA guy, and you were the AAA editor at the Album Network, and boy, we don't know anything about AAA. I would love to pick your brain. Would you, go to lunch with me at some point? I'd love to just sit and chat about what you know about AAA and radio in this market." Because she's like a former news person from NPR, so she really didn't have that background, but she was the station manager, so she was trying to learn everything she could.
Mm.
So, what's that?
Wow, that's cool. What was her name, by the way?
Karen Kearns, and she had been faculty at Cal State Northridge and the station manager as part of that, and she retired soon after I started working there. But so we went out to lunch, and I think we sat and talked for a couple of hours, and at some point I told her, I said, "Listen, it's been a long time since I've been on the air." I think it was 23 years at that point, but I'd love to do a weekly show if you got anything open. And she said, oh yeah, maybe let me, kind of take a look. And she got a hold of me a couple of days later or something and said, it's kind of early in the morning, but what do you think about Saturday mornings from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m.? And I'm like, sold. So I started doing that Saturday morning show, and I did that for, maybe 6 months or so. And then they hired Sky Daniels to be the program director. And Sky and I didn't know each other well. I think we'd met once, but we knew of each other because of our paths. He'd been at KMET and a bunch of big rock radio stations, and he actually was even a client of mine at the Album Network when he was running radio promotion for Epic Records, but he wasn't the guy that I dealt with most at Epic. It was the person below him. So we kind of knew each other, but we didn't know each other. And he came in to be program director, and he and Karen Kearns decided that they were going to have full-time DJs, and they offered me the morning job. So when KCSN had its first full-time DJs back in July of 2011, I was the first one on the air that first Monday morning.
Wow.
I think it was July 15th, 2011. And was full-time there for 10 years and, 4 months, something along those lines.
Wow.
Yeah, it just fell into my lap. It was really amazing. I couldn't believe that, after my entire radio career as a paid DJ lasted a few months out in San Bernardino, and 23 years later, now I'm the full-time morning guy at my favorite radio station in my own hometown. I couldn't believe how my good fortune. It was amazing and quite a privilege, really a privilege to be a part of that station.
Yeah, how much free? Because obviously AAA is different from free form, but how much creativity did you have in breaking new music on KCSN?
Well, I'll tell you what, if any of my former listeners hear this podcast, they're going to be disappointed to know that I had virtually no leeway. It was all pre-programmed by Sky. On my Saturday show, he gave me 2 songs an hour where I was free to play whatever I wanted. That was it.
Wow. Although that is more than most DJs get if you think about it, but still it is limited from I guess what a lot of people thought.
Yeah, and well, the good news is, and this is the thing, and this is the part that's really the more important takeaway, is that if I had been left to play whatever I wanted to play, I would have played something very similar to that anyway. I mean, I might not have played all the new songs that were coming in. They weren't always my personal taste. But I would have been finding other new songs to play in their place. And generally speaking, I mean, I said it was my favorite radio station, and I loved how adventurous it was. I learned a lot of music that way, and some of it is now among my favorite music, even to this day. So I got opened up to a lot of great stuff, but I would have played my mix. People, now I'm doing a free-for-all show on KRVM every Thursday where the show is called Thursday Free-for-All. It could just as easily be called, Jim Nelson's Private Stash. I mean, I bring my own music up there and it's literally, I got 3 minutes left in this song. What's going to sound good coming out of it, right? So it's like back to my college radio days. And the show is very similar. It sounds very similar to what I did at KCSN. So there's the correlation, I suppose. There's the connection. But yeah, no, unfortunately, no real sense of freedom there at all at KCSN.
One of the first AAA stations that I can recall, although it was not really called AAA, but it kind of was the predecessor to that, was the Mellow Sound, 93 KNX FM. And in fact, it's now been recreated online as themellosound.net. And you have several former KNX-FM DJs and PDs working on it. And they even have
Mike Saklarides was there for a long time, wasn't he?
Actually, he was at Coast, but he may have been. Let me see if he was
at Coast. Who were the guys at KNX? I listened to that station a lot.
Yeah, Christopher Ames is doing the Odyssey Files again, and it's not old Odyssey File episodes, but it's new material, new headlines from just the kind of oddball news that's out there. I know that Douglas C. Brown, who I interviewed last year, is also one of the co-owners and the creativity behind it. Steve Marshall, the former program director, works on it. There's a couple of others whose names slipping me right now, but they've pretty much recreated, and they've also got the original artists who were played on the station giving liners like, "Hi, this is Michael McDonald from the Doobie Brothers. You're listening to the original Mellow Sound at themellosound.net of KNX-FM." Or, "Hi, this is Richard Carpenter. You're listening to the original Mellow Sound." And and other people as well or Joni Mitchell, I think, has given a liner before. So you've got a lot of stars that were the singer-songwriters. Because one person who had an air check that they gave to me from 1982, Robert David Hall from CSI, as Dave Hall was on there. In fact, I've got the air check on my YouTube channel. And he described it this way. They had a lot of singer-songwriters that were featured. You also had mellow tracks from the rock artists themselves, like Going California by Led Zeppelin would be an example of that. And then you had artists that were hits in England only, but not out here, like Cliff Richard, Camel, early Alan Parsons, early Genesis. And then you had artists that were popular in the LA and Bay Area circuit, like Sneaker and LaRue. And he said that the segues were just beautiful. And that's the way it is today, which I thought was interesting. I'm not sure if KNX-FM played an inspiration in your, kind of wheelhouse of stuff, or the what's now called the SoCal Sound. But I was kind of curious about that.
I did listen to KNX-FM. I'd say through the 80s. I can't remember when they changed formats, but I'm thinking late
1983
70s, early 80s maybe.
Yeah, 1983 is when they switched formats to become KKHR Hit Radio 93, which was pretty much a copy of Mike Joseph's Hot Hits format.
All right, so that makes sense. I did listen to them. They didn't make an impact on me from a personality standpoint. I'm afraid I don't really remember any of their DJs. Although now that I think about it, one of them is coming to mind. I can picture his face. I'm trying to Rick. Maybe I'll think of his last name. I can picture his face, and his first name was Rick, but I'm drawing a blank on his last. But the point is, musically, I thought they were a very, very well-programmed station, and it was a nice antithesis to KLOS and KMET, which were playing a bit harder rock. KNX was more of your soft rock, and maybe your James Taylors and Cat Stevens and whatnot. And so it was good to listen to when I was in a mood for something a little bit lighter, a little bit softer. But from a personality point of view, I can't say that they really made much of an impact on me at all.
Mm. Yeah, that was more wondering, was the musical sound rather than the personalities. We're talking with Jim Nelson, currently on 91.9 KRVM, longtime DJ on 88.5 KCSN, and he's also a writer. Next time we talk more about 93 KNX-FM and an interesting trivia tidbit that a lot of you may know, but maybe you don't. We'll find out whether Jim knew about that, as well as the long, slow demise of the mighty Met KMET and why that happened.